What's going on, everybody? You're listening to this week's episode of the Sports Scramble podcast brought to you by Belly Up Sports. I'm your host, Chet, and I've got Jacob joining me, and we have a special guest. He's an individual that has traveled all 50 states, played 269 random pairings at 111 different municipal golf courses. We've got Jeremy with Paired Up Golf. How are you doing tonight, Jeremy?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, fellas.
Yeah, I found Jeremy. I was scrolling on TikTok as you normally do. He popped up on my For You page, and I guess that's the algorithm working, trying to reach more people. We're hoping it starts working for us a little bit more, get those numbers going.
Yeah,
Um,
I guess so. I've basically posted virtual, I don't know, almost nothing on TikTok, but I posted that trailer on there, and I was like, all right, TikTok. I started
yeah,
trying
that,
that.
yeah, it's crazy that social media, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, you just post something and let it do its thing, and see what
hmm
it kicks back. So we've met plenty of people through that, and through our network, Belly Up Sports. There's people can blow up, or it takes a while to get through there. So,
For sure.
uh, well, like I mentioned, I'm looking at your website. The 269 random partners at 111 municipal golf courses all across America. I think it says 23,455 miles traveled. That's pretty crazy. So,
Yeah.
um, we wanted to have Jeremy come on the show and kind of tell his story, but in true Sports Scramble podcast fashion, we have to ask him the icebreaker question. Jacob, I'll let you take this one since we ask all our guests this.
Yeah, so the question is, if you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be?
Hmm. All right, this came to mind quickly, uh, and I'll quiz you guys. So I'm a Tennessee grad. So who do you think I
Peyton
want at
Manning.
dinner? You nailed it.
I knew it as soon as you said Tennessee. I was like, it's got to
Yes.
be Peyton Manning.
Yes. And so when I was, so I mean, I was born in '90s. So, he was at Tennessee when I was like just kind of becoming a big fan. My parents went there, my older siblings went there. We all
Right.
were, brainwashed at an early age to wear orange and sing Rocky Top and all that. And so I remember when he went to the Colts, like that's why I'm a Colts fan still to this day, just because I put in all
Yeah.
that time with them. And but when I was a little kid in elementary school, I made this. You had to make a commercial for some product, and you had to like make up your product. And I made up the cereal called Manning Munch cereal, and have this little commercial of how nutritious it was. And I'm wearing a Peyton jersey, and made this little box. I think my parents still have like this Manning Munch cereal box at their
That's
house somewhere.
hilarious. That's so cool. The
So,
Manning
so
family is a little intertwined with mine. We mentioned before the show you traveled on down to the Mississippi Gulf Coast, Biloxi Gulfport area. There's a
yeah.
famous French restaurant, Mary Mahoney's, that half my family owns, and my
Oh,
mom used
nice.
to work there in high school, and uh, Archie and his wife came down and brought the boys, and they needed somebody to babysit the boys while they had a nice dinner. And my mom was picked. She was the waitress that wasn't working that night, so
No
she actually
way.
she sat Peyton, Eli, and Art and Cooper.
Cooper,
That's the
yeah.
third one. Yeah, so it's
That's
always
too
I
cool.
was
What a sweet experience for her.
yeah. So it's always a fun little story to tell when someone brings up Peyton Manning. I bet you probably love the Manning cast, huh? Getting to watch your childhood hero call NFL games.
I do. Like I'll find myself watching some random like Jets game or some game I just don't care about. I'm like,
Yeah.
my girlfriend's like, "Oh, is the Colts playing?" I'm like, "No, but Peyton's on, so I'm just gonna watch him."
The Manning brothers will. I mean, they're going to run the
I
NFL one
know.
day,
It's
and
crazy. Seriously.
that'll be awesome. It'll be back to its full glory. But
hmm
let's jump into it. Tell the listeners your story, the journey you embarked on, kind of what got you into it.
Yeah. So last March, I left with my girlfriend and our two little dogs on a what ended up being a 9-month, 50-state road trip in our converted Sprinter van. And
Did you do
so
the conversion yourself, or did you buy it that way? Because I saw some pictures. It looks sweet.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I actually bought it that way. So there was a couple
Okay.
in Chattanooga who was which is only I live in Nashville, so they're only 2 hours kind of southeast of me, and most of that stuff's on the West Coast. Like most of it's in San Diego or
Hmm.
just kind of so anywhere in SoCal. And so I saw this one pop up in Chattanooga, and I was like, I have to get this one. And so I went down there and like talked to this couple, and they used to live in a van, and for a few years now they just build them out. And I just saw they just posted one for sale actually today.
Okay.
But they just kind of go one at a time, and
Right.
found it. And just so your listeners know, and you guys as well, I was a complete novice to RV life. I did not come from a family who camps ever really, or especially does an RV. I rode an RV one time as a kid.
Mhm.
I'm from Florida originally, so I went up to a Tennessee game, football game in Knoxville, in like a friend's dad's RV, but it was like one of those huge bus, like tricked out
Right. Yeah.
RVs where it's like it might as well be a house essentially. And so yeah, it was definitely, this past year was a learning experience, no question. And so yeah, we ended up going, like you said, those numbers there, all 50 states, played 111 municipal courses. And my sole purpose of the trip though was to get into random pairings at golf courses. So nothing pre-planned. This wasn't a golf trip of like what's the nicest course I can play, or what's, you know, what's the best course in town. Like I strictly played the city-owned municipals, because as you guys probably know, since you play, like that's where you get the widest variety of people, right? I
Right.
mean,
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
yeah, like you'll get people literally, I don't know, down to the last dollar, to people who make millions a year. Like you get
Mhm.
the whole economic bracket out there, men, women, everybody. And so um kids, I played with a handful of kids like on this trip too. And so so yeah, so my whole purpose was working on a book about just these random pairings and these people, and just met some pretty amazing people as I went. And yeah, it was kind of the tag along fourth for
Yeah.
about 9 months on the course.
That's so awesome. So I guess is your background, are you a writer and you wanted to chase something, or is this was just like something that you thought of one day and said, you know what, let's make it happen?
Yeah, a little bit of both. So I worked for the Golfers Journal for a little bit over a year.
Okay.
If you're familiar with them, it's this like quarterly publication.
Mm.
And so but otherwise, I mean, I've worked in sales for a window replacement company for about 9 years, and was I'd started to do paired up on the side. So I took a trip to Canada in 2018, just like a family vacation, and got paired up with this couple up in Banff Springs, which is this really epic course. I mean, it's like these crazy mountains everywhere, and this crystal blue river, and it rained, hailed, was like cold, then really hot. Like it was this crazy day out there. I was playing with my
All
dad.
four seasons in one day in
Yeah,
Canada.
pretty much. I
It
mean, it
sounds
really
like pretty
was.
intense.
Like just at one point I had on like three jackets, then I had on just a short sleeve shirt, and like it was a really bizarre day. But like the thing that stood out to me the most that day was this older couple named Herb and Jill that we
Mhm.
were randomly paired up with. And like literally that in the restaurant after that round, I was sitting with my parents and my sister. I was like, man, I think like that's the most interesting part of golf courses to me, is that you show up and you just have no clue who you're going to meet, and you meet these people. And what I found through doing that and through this journey was everyone has a story that would really stop you in your tracks.
Right.
And the trick is just kind of getting out of your own way to hear it, essentially. So I started doing this thing. I just created this thing called Paired Up on the side, where, inside of my sales job, and was just, blogging or just posting on social media about random people I was paired up with at golf courses. And then eventually, then I worked for the Golfer Journal for a bit at the same time as doing the sales job, but then eventually left both and took on this trip.
Mm.
That's hey, when you got a dream, follow it,
Hmm.
Uh, So
As far, getting into like the courses and things, based on you played all 50 states, like you said, is it where's, guys have preferences, I guess, when they go places. Grass is different, environments are different. Where would you say your favorite part, like region wise, of the country to play golf would be?
Oh man, that's a good question, because you're totally right. I mean, it is wildly different. Like I mean, I grew up in Florida, so a bunch of warm weather grass. I've lived in the South. I mean, pretty much my whole life. I lived in Chicago for a couple of years after college, but yeah, so I never really played like the desert terrain until this trip, and then California, you kind of get into a whole new thing there, and then of course all across like the north and like northeast, you get that awesome like cool weather grass where take these big divots that you can just toss back and
it's
you know
like beaver tails
Beaver tails,
that
yeah.
yeah,
fly
and
10
like
yards. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I mean, I played places in the middle of like the desert in like West Texas and New Mexico that you couldn't make a divot if you tried, right? It's just like dust just explodes
Yeah.
when you hit the ground. And so, one that comes to mind though when you ask that is I really like some of those ones on the coast of California where, and I know a lot of people don't like putting on like POA greens if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, you hear tour pros talk about how bumpy it
Right.
is and
Yeah.
blah blah blah. But I don't know. I like that stuff, like through San Diego, even all the way up to, Seattle and Portland. Just kind of those coastal spots. I think I like that
So
grass a lot.
when you were over there, was there any temptation to like sneak over to Pebble Beach and try to get around there, or was it strictly municipal courses? That's what you set out to do. That's what you were going to play.
Man, temptation was at an all time high at certain times, but no, I stayed true to it. Just did the munis,
Right.
and I was like, if I go play somewhere else that's not a muni once, it's a slippery slope,
Yeah,
So
you start to fall like, oh, I'm in
yeah,
Oregon. I got Banded Dunes. Let's go try that out. Got Pebble
literally,
Beach. Yeah.
yes, literally drove directly past the entrance of Bandon Dunes, and I like
Jeez.
made a stop next to it. I told my girlfriend I was like, you have to get a picture of me real quick in front of the sign, like covering my eyes or something.
Yeah.
But
Put that on the
um,
cover of your book.
I know, right? And
Refuse to
then
play them.
there's one. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Landman that just opened in Nebraska. It's a friend of mine, Rob Collins. He designed Sweden's Cove, if you've heard of that. He and
Mm,
his design company. Anyway, they just opened this course last year that they opened it kind of late in the season, but it's now like the number one new public course I think in America is what Golf Digest rated it. And so uh, I stopped by just like look at that because he happened to be in town when I was there, and he was like, "Hey, we're playing tomorrow. If you want to go out there and play," and I was like, "Better not."
yeah,
So
you can't.
I was like, "I'll come back. I'll come back," which I am this summer. Going to go up there and play. So,
Yeah, you
but
should
yes,
do a tour through all the municipal and then a tour of all the public, but maybe not city-owned courses throughout the
I
country.
know. Yeah,
Try
there's
those
plenty
out.
of those for
Yeah.
sure.
Was it tough finding like spots to stop around the country? Like how did you plan out your route? Strictly municipal. Did that tie in, or did you like have a route and then you would break off to go play a course and then get back on the trail?
So I planned this trip in actually back in 2019. So I had the idea for it, and this is going to tie into what you're asking there. But
Mhm.
I had this idea for it in the summer of 2019. I was like, I'd been doing the paired up stuff a little bit on the side, and was like, man, I just really want to do this on like a bigger scale. And then I was traveling for work one time, and I was in Indianapolis and just played this muni and met these two awesome ladies that I just was randomly paired up with. And I was like, all right, this is it. I need to like go to all these different places and do that. And so I spent the second half of 2019 actually, which feels I don't know what like 100 years ago now after
Yeah,
COVID,
really.
but I mean I spent that whole half of the year mapping it out. And originally I was going to do like this 4 month, or I thought it was going to take 4 months, but I was going to do this loop around the country where it was going to be, I think, 35 total states. And even when we left on the trip, that was still the plan, was to do essentially leave from Nashville, go to Florida, go all the way west to San Diego, basically along I-10, up to Seattle, essentially across the top part of the country to Chicago, around to the Northeast and back down. And so I was going to skip just a bunch of stuff in the middle there.
Right.
So I had all those courses mapped out um, for the most part, I would say up until I got to like the Northeast, because up around there, I don't know, I just didn't know that area super well, and I just needed some like local intel from people. But yeah, so a lot of it was just online research. Which,
Mhm.
man, if you want to find a website that looks like it was created in 1995 and hasn't been touched, go to city owned like city websites
Yeah,
and
really.
click on their parks department and try to figure out some stuff about a golf course on there, or just trying to figure out if a place is truly a municipal course. Which thankfully there's this website, I don't know if you guys know it, called Golf Link, that
Mhm.
they'll list. It looks like a really basic website, but it was so helpful to me because they would just list, within a city all the courses, or within a
Right.
state even all the courses, and then they would label them municipal and blah blah blah. And then sometimes I would call just to like make sure, like, hey, you guys owned by the city? Okay, cool. But so a lot of it, I knew like a lot of courses as I was going, but man, I would say probably like 30% of them maybe popped up as I was going just through word of mouth. Like, hey, you've got to go to fill in the blank, and then I'd be like, okay, sweet, and then go check it out. But I knew the route we were going to do, and so as long as it was somewhat on that route, we were good.
Gotcha. I gotta ask, where did you play in Louisiana? Because I went to LSU. So there's a fun little city-owned course in Baton Rouge in the capital called City Park. It's a 9-hole
That's
course. It's short. It's pretty fun.
that is precisely where I played.
There
So
you go.
yeah, so I've played a few places actually. So I stopped in Baton Rouge just because I mean, being an SEC person, I've like always wanted to go to a game there and stuff. Just never have made it down there,
Right.
um, and so I just wanted to stop and check out Baton Rouge just in general. But yeah, so I played City Park, and that place is really fun, man. It
Mhm.
has some really fun holes that like it's not. I mean, you're not gonna be bored
They're,
out
th-
there.
yeah, and they're not long holes, so a lot of them are like drivable par fours. And
Drivable, but you got to be accurate. Like you got to
yeah,
hit a good shot. And so yeah, so I played there and met a couple pastors there that I played with, and they were cool. I think I mean they were both local, and then stopped by campus, saw Mike the Tiger. He was out in his habitat, and
yep.
I was telling my girlfriend, I was like, hey, they have this live tiger on campus. We like kind of have to go see. So we stopped by, and she was like, I mean, she's from like California and has not been baptized or in all things SEC football or anything.
Right.
And so I
She's
was
probably
like,
shocked that there was an
yeah,
actual
she's like,
tiger.
what's happening here again? I was like, well, I'll tell you, his name's Mike. He's, I don't know how much longer they're going to do this, but he's down here. And then I went to New Orleans and played Joseph Bartholomew there, and then played another one that was called, I think it was called City Park there as well, I think.
It's called
Or no, it's within City
it's
Park.
yeah. I can't remember the
Um,
name of it, but yeah, they have a park called City Park in New Orleans.
yes, there's two courses there now. I didn't play the newer. This is terrible. I can't think of the name of it, but I didn't play. There's a newer one that was redesigned to try to get like a tour event and stuff that never happened. And then I played the
Mhm.
older one there. It's
Yeah.
either like the
There's
North Course or
there's the North Course and the South Course.
yes.
IU
I played
Oaks.
the North Course. Yes.
Okay.
I wore a hat from there forever until it like eventually just discolored too much. But it like had a pelican on it. It was just it's
Mhm.
kind of a cool New Orleans hat. But I liked it,
So
man. Going to New Orleans too was I'd only been there once, and I was in high school, so it had been quite a while. But
right.
man, that place is a true unique one of one town. I mean, it's
It
in
is.
the South, but it's so different than everything else in the South, right?
Right.
It
Like
is.
I
Well,
loved it though.
actually, we have two other co-hosts on the show. One of them is actually his birthday, so he's out celebrating with his soon-to-be wife, and the other one was working. He works for the New Orleans Pelicans, so they have a game tonight. He's working there. But the
Perfect.
four of us will all be in New Orleans in a few weeks for Wade, our other co-host, for his wedding. So we may have to bring the clubs with us, Jacob, and try to get around over at
Yeah,
on the North Course and check it out.
You
they
could, yeah.
definitely
It's
are
the
stuck in there.
yeah the North Course is definitely like the older, much more kind of tired of the two.
Hmm.
But I met it was so we happened to be there during the Final Four weekend last year, which was
Okay.
hosted there, and
Yeah.
just kind of out of coincidence. And I played on the Monday of the championship game with a coach. Like every basically, there are tons of coaches go to the Final Four. Just a huge networking weekend, and
Hmm.
I was randomly paired up with a guy there who coaches at Loyola of Maryland,
Yep.
and he was trying to play just before he was flying back, and then we kept up a little bit just through social media, and then by the time we got around to which that school's in Baltimore, by the time we got around to Baltimore, it was their like big Midnight Madness like season kickoff event, and he was like, hey, please come to this thing. And so I ended up going to that and hanging out and like catching up with him again, which was too cool.
That's really like you said before we started recording. You meet people and network, and you never know if you're ever going to talk to them again, or you end up going to a basketball game because the head
Yeah,
coach is who you played with.
I know. I
That-
find myself like following, like, like almost getting updates on my phone, like checking out their team, seeing how they're doing. And
yeah,
his name is Tavares. He's a really cool guy.
yeah. So, Jacob, you go ahead. I've got one. I've got a
Yeah.
question in
So
the back of my mind.
yeah. So I had to ask you. Something caught my eye like in your story of your journey and everything, and it was you playing with Tiger's caddy from the 95 Masters. You know, tell me about like that experience, you know, the story, like I'm sure the stories were endless, you know, of all the things that happened there, of course. You know, with the history of the Masters, and the changes, you know, it being like the only event that had its own caddies, you know, of course that was
Hmm.
gone, but like what kind of experience was that like, you know, in the stories that he would tell?
Yeah, that was kind of crazy. I mean, it was the Friday Skins game at the Patch, which was what they call the Augusta, municipal course there, just because one of the general managers at one point, his wife had a cabbage patch that grew there, and so every local around there calls it the Patch. And
Hmm.
so I showed up on a Friday, no tea time or anything. Was just hoping to get out with somebody. This was right before Thanksgiving, so we were getting down towards the end of the trip, and they were like, "Well, hey, there's a Skins game coming out. You can ask them if they'll let you join or whatever." And I was like, "That sounds great. I'll do that." And then was randomly paired up with him, and one of the guys in the group was like, "Hey, by the way, he was Tiger's caddy at the Masters." And I was
He didn't.
thinking like,
He didn't even come out and say it. He was trying to
"Yeah,
lay low and be cool.
I know. I was thinking, I was like, wait, no, what did he caddy for? Because I was, only picturing Tiger having like Fluff or Stevie or
Right.
Joey LaCava and stuff, and but yeah, it was Tiger's first Masters. So obviously the U.S. Amateur Champion, which Tiger was at the time, gets a berth into the Masters, and it was in 1995, and they just wanted a local caddy that had knowledge of the place, and so Tommy grew up in a low income neighborhood that borders Augusta Country Club, which borders Augusta National, and
Hmm.
um, he I'll get into his story in a second, but yeah, so he was, they came to Tommy, and he had been caddying there for, I mean, since he was literally a little kid, and um, when they asked him, he was like, "I don't want to caddy for Tiger," which is such a funny thing to think about now. I mean, knowing what we know now, but this was '95. He's an amateur. Like Tommy was like, "I don't want to caddy." He told me, he's like, "I don't want to caddy for no damn amateur." He's like, "I want to win." And so, like, he really
If
wanted to
only he
actually.
waited a few years.
I know, right? And so the closest, because he got second one time with a guy named Jody Mudd on the
Mhm.
bag, and it was like the closest he came to winning, and it had like a big moment on 18 and everything, and so anyway, so eventually he agrees to caddy for Tiger, and he told me the story where Tiger on Friday, which he was calling cut day, had driven it into the pine straw on 13, like in the trees there, where a lot of famous shots have happened, right? And
Mhm.
he just kept telling Tiger to lay up and was trying to give him this layup yardage, and Tiger just kept demanding for the yardage at the pin, and he like wouldn't tell him. Then eventually he was like, "Fine, it's two whatever he said, 230 or 220 something to the pin," and Tiger was like, "Give me the 4 iron," and like hit it on the green, made birdie, and made the
In
cut,
true Tiger
and
Woods fashion.
yeah, exactly. And then of course, got the low amateur that year, and but so that's kind of a cool example on this trip where that caddying for Tiger in the Masters is obviously like on the first line of that guy's bio, right? I mean, that's
Mhm.
in his obituary one day. That'll probably be what's said
It'll be
first,
on his
but
tombstone. If it was me, it'd
yeah,
be a
right.
Tiger's caddy and then
Yeah,
loving husband and father.
yes. And so he went on to I mean, he's caddied for VJ and Kuchar and Webb Simpson and all these different people at various tour events throughout the year, and he still caddies on the Corn Ferry Tour some now, and I'm pretty sure he was in his early 70s. And
Wow.
uh, so he's still getting after it. But what I found so interesting with him was that, like, yes, of course, I was drawn to the Tiger aspect of it because, as any golf fan or golfer anywhere, like, you hear Tiger, you're like, tell me everything, But he he grew up in that low income neighborhood that's called the Hill there. That's the Sand Hills neighborhood, and his dad was never in the picture. His mom left when he was a kid and moved to New York to be a housekeeper, leaving Tommy and his sister in Augusta to somewhat be raised by his grandparents, but really to fend for themselves. And so he started caddying at Augusta Country Club because they paid $3 a day for
Wow.
caddying back in the day, and he did that so that he could provide lunch money for he and his sister at school.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And then the kind of the rule in town was you had to caddy at Augusta Country Club and prove yourself there to then get called up to essentially the big leagues, which was Augusta National, which he got called up to eventually And that was really awesome for him because he could now make $7 a day at Augusta National.
Yeah.
And keep in
That's
mind, this is
crazy.
in like the segregated South when he's growing up, and this is back when the Masters, the chairman there said like the golfers will be white, the caddies will be black, and I
Yeah.
mean that was back in that era. And so
Mhm.
he was caddying forever out there, and he told me he would skip school to go caddy, and eventually the caddy master had to tell him like, hey man, I can't give you loops during the week, like I know you're skipping school, you can come here after school on the weekends, etc. So I mean I just found his story really inspiring,
Yeah,
just on a
really.
personal level, even if you just remove the tiger aspect out of it,
Mhm.
which was pretty
Yeah.
neat.
Yeah,
So
I've seen so many stories of like that same thing of all these different caddies. You know, yeah, just like you said, you know, getting to that point in Augusta National, and of course, you know, that's no longer, you know, in the picture anymore. Knowing, you know, just from $3 to $7 to now we're seeing, you know, caddies take home 10 and 15% of the winnings each
Oh
week, you know, which
sure.
is completely different, you know, just 60 years later, and you're seeing
Mm-hmm.
things, you know, that you never thought you would, you know, from his perspective, I'm sure. But yeah.
Certainly, and the guys in that Friday game out there, a lot of them were caddies at Augusta. He just happened to get Tiger's bag, right?
right,
So,
yeah.
but I mean,
He
a lot
didn't
of
want
those,
it, but he got it.
I know exactly. So, a lot of those guys that were in that group were awesome to talk to, just because I mean, you can't really grow up or really live in Augusta, Georgia, without being intertwined with the Masters to
Right.
some degree, is
Yeah.
what it seemed like, especially a golfer, right? And so, I mean, because it's to them, it's their hometown tournament. To you and I and people listening, it's probably the holy grail of like, oh,
Yeah,
I hope
it's
I
the
get to go
Super
there one
It
Bowl.
is,
day,
yeah.
Yeah,
right?
the Super Bowl of
Yeah, or
golf.
like everyone can be like, oh, I got to go one time, and you remember everything from that day, etc. And so for them, it's their hometown, And another guy in our group that day, so it was me, Tommy, and there's three of us. The other guy was a guy named Jim Dent, who played on the PGA Tour and then won 13 times on the Champions Tour. He had like this really robust Champions Tour career, and I believe he was 80. And I mean, he was always known for his distance and was still just like piping it out there and like still had all the game you would want. And his son now is the GM at the Patch at the Muni there. So
Okay, cool.
yep. And then
Runs in the family.
exactly. So, and like the street pulling into the golf course is Jim Dent Way, and so
Mhm.
that place is, I mean, obviously everyone's going to talk about Augusta National, rightly so. But man, I won't go back to Augusta without stopping by there. That's for sure.
Right. Well, and that's what's cool about your story is when people think Augusta, they immediately think the Masters, but then you've got a whole nother perspective on it.
Hmm.
Did you make it by Augusta National? Take a picture of at least the front gate or something. Drive by there.
Of course,
Yeah,
yeah.
you wouldn't be a golf fan if you didn't.
Yes,
So
I told my girlfriend, I
try.
was like, "Hey, we have to drive by this place. I need to take a picture. There's probably going to be a guard." And sure enough, there's like a state trooper looking guard with the big wide brim hat, and he like, so I just like stopped in this turn lane essentially in the middle, and I was taking a picture down there. He saw me, and I just kind of like waved, and he was like, gave me a little salute, like, "You're
He
the
probably sees it
100th
all
person
the
to do
time.
this week." Yeah,
Yeah.
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 So
So
the must stops were Mike the Tiger and Augusta National. So that makes me feel better about LSU. It's nationwide.
correct, in that order, I'd say you got it.
Yeah, there you go. Mike the Tiger, then Augusta National. That's
Yes,
we're using that as a soundbite for the whole episode.
perfect.
oh, oh, I wanted to ask, what was your well before I got two questions for you. Where would y'all stay at night? Would you just kind of find random RV parks along the way? You mentioned you'd shower at Planet Fitness. What was your plan for where to stay?
There's one place that's in basically every town in the country. Can you guess? Can you guess where we stayed?
Walmart or
Walmart.
Planet Fitness?
You nailed it, Walmart. So we slept. I mean, we really only did campgrounds, I think, 4 total times out
Okay.
of 9 months. Like I thought we were going to do those probably more than that, but sometimes the stuff was booked up and we didn't know when we'd be somewhere until the day before potentially. And so, but yeah, so we slept, I mean, primarily in Walmart parking lots and Cracker Barrel parking lots in the
Nice
Cracker
Cracker Barrel.
Barrel
There you go.
areas of the country. And those felt a little safer for, whatever reason. And I mean, we didn't have any crazy issues either way,
Right.
but Yes, I feel like I could walk in blindfolded into the Cracker Barrel country store section of it and tell you where everything is in there. And
Was that your go-to
um,
breakfast spot along when
man,
they were in the
well,
country?
so they have those RV spots like literally painted behind every Cracker Barrel. Like you'll see like RV and bus parking, like a sign when you pull into all of them.
I had
And
no idea that was a thing. Now I do.
yeah, next time you go by, I just look, you'll see a little white street sign that says RV and bus parking, and then arrows
Yeah.
pointing behind it. And early on, I was like, man, I wonder why they let you do this. And then I would end up buying breakfast there in the mornings. I'm like, oh, this is why.
Yeah, they get
Exactly
the
why,
business for sure.
They've trapped me. Same with Walmart. Like I go in there to use the restroom in the mornings and then end up, I don't know, getting a couple things. I'm like, I don't need this. Dang it, what am I
Yeah.
doing? So yeah, so we did those two mainly. If we were in some cool areas of the country, we would try to find or we'd use an app that's called iOverlander that just other RV people post on about different places that are free to park or free to stay. So sometimes we would end up like when we were out in Monterey and like Pacific Grove, little town out there, like we were able to slept like basically directly on the beach. We did that a handful of times, and in the mountains and like in the Red Rocks and Sedona, like we definitely some cool places, but home sweet Walmart
Yeah.
was the name of the game pretty much.
Well, I hope you stopped at HEB when you were in Texas.
Well,
It's-
yes, of course I did that too.
So we got LSU, Augusta, HEB in that
yes,
order.
yes.
Augusta ranks above HEB, but
And so my girlfriend and I both have some food allergies, so we cooked a lot on the trip. Like we weren't
yeah,
really. I mean, most people
that's a
think
good way to save. Good way to save money too while you're
yeah,
traveling the country.
coincidentally, yes. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, most people picture that kind of trip just like eating fast food or whatever the whole time, but
Mhm.
not really an option for us. So I cooked on this little 2-burner camp stove with 2 cast iron skillets most of the time, and so I have some pretty strong opinions on grocery stores because we would have to do like legitimate grocery shopping
Right.
in most towns, and HEB was pretty good. It definitely fell down the ranks some as I kept traveling, which I know is like uh, blasphemy to any Texan, but
Yeah.
it's
We'll let
solid.
it slide.
It's a solid store for sure.
What was your favorite course that you played along the way?
Man, favorite is really tough. Partly because I played so many different kinds of places that really captured my attention, which I'll tell you some of those because I mean you think of
Okay.
like the most famous municipals in the country are Torrey Pines, Bethpage Black, Chambers Bay, and Harding Park in
Mhm.
San Francisco, where Morikawa won the PGA recently, and like those are ones that are their greens fees are like $200+ right, somewhere between $200 and $300, and they're municipals, but they
They're not
don't
really.
totally feel
Yeah.
like it, right? Now, Harding Park in San Francisco felt like the vibe of a muni, like the clubhouse, just the whole experience there really felt like it. Granted, the course is obviously like big and famous, right?
Mhm.
But so I mean, like Chambers Bay is one of my favorite golf courses, muni or otherwise. I just love that place. I'd played it once before this trip, and so I was super pumped to go back there. But then there's like this whole mid level of courses that are all I'd say 30 to $50. So, really good value and are just spectacular. I mean, I think of like Jeffersonville and Philadelphia is awesome. Kinney Park or Kinney Park, I can never remember how to say that, in Hartford, Connecticut. Like these different places that I played, Swope Memorial and Kansas City. And there's a bunch of these places like that are so cool. But then there's this whole other subsection I played that are 9 holes, practically $10 to play, and
Yeah.
were some of my favorite places I stopped at. Like there's one in Eugene, Oregon that I love called Laurelwood, and it's 9 holes that I'm like, man, people need to stop here going to and from Bandon. Like this is a no-brainer stop. This is like
Mhm.
your perfect warm-up round as you're, once you land. And so, which I'll write about in my book. But there's so it's hard to name favorites, but there's certain ones that really grabbed me. And one of them actually that just came to mind was we went to Alaska for 5 days, and I played Anchorage golf course up there,
Okay.
and I teed off. So I ate dinner. This was in July, so it's stayed
It's
light
always
for
sunny. Yeah.
really long. Yeah, so I ate dinner and then teed off at 6:30 to play 18 holes and
Wow.
finished. I think around like 11 or so, and then it was still light for pretty much till midnight there,
That's crazy.
and the sun. I mean, like, so I had a camera over my shoulder the whole time, like golf bag on one shoulder, camera on the other. I walked virtually every round, and so I uh, was always, it was a total bonus to me if I was playing a course in golden hour or like around sunrise where it's like really good light, like not the middle of the
Right.
day
Yeah.
sun, but I couldn't always control that just because the schedule, etc. And so in Alaska, though, it basically freezes on like golden hour light for hours on end. And so, like, as a photographer, you're like, this is perfect. This is, I don't have to like rush around. I don't have like 30 minutes suddenly that has good
You got to
photography light.
get all your pictures in.
Yeah, literally hours of it, and just really gorgeous. And so, I saw a bear, saw a moose, kind of checked off all the Alaska bingo bingo squares essentially.
So I was going to ask you, you played all 50. How did you get Hawaii and Alaska? We've heard the Alaska. How did you get to Hawaii? Was that obviously you didn't drive there?
Correct. So those are
but-
the only two that we flew to. So we left the van in Seattle and flew to Alaska this summer. And we originally had the van booked to be on a ferry to go there, but it wasn't going to get us back in time to get to the East Coast before winter hit. And so I was like, oh, dang. So I guess we'll just have to fly there. And then we did Hawaii at the very end. So we made it back home to Nashville. Actually, in this kind of weird route, had to hit Arkansas last before getting home. And so, no offense to Arkansas, but I didn't feel like I could totally end the trip in Arkansas. And so
Right.
we got, we got home. We're home for 2 days, and then flew to Hawaii for about a week right before Christmas. And
Okay.
in Hawaii, I played 2 places, but the last course I played was this 9-hole golf course called Kahuku. The parking lot is just kind of this gravelly mixture of gravel, grass. There's 3 trailers there that are really rusted out, and you would have no clue like which one a golf shop is when you pull in there. And it's just like there's some chickens walking around. Like, this is the most rustic place, but it is directly on the ocean and like the most primo real estate, and stunningly gorgeous. Just looking at like this unbelievably like turquoise blue ocean the whole time, and it's 9 holes, and it's epically windy there. Just the wind's howling all the time, and so their hole markers are made out of just wood that are nailed to anything that won't blow over. Like, there's a street sign near one of them that's just nailed to that, and there's just so many cool things about it. And I was got paired up with this local guy there named Paka, who was just the perfect way to end the trip essentially.
So you didn't end it in Arkansas. You ended it in Hawaii. There you go. That's
Yes.
the last chapter of the book, Hawaii.
I think I was maybe the only person in the world to have gone from Lexington to Louisville to Little Rock to Honolulu, like in order. So
All on the same vacation.
yes,
The
so that's
same trip.
correct, within like a week of each other.
So, I mean, shout out to your girlfriend for tagging along on this golf trip around the country. Did she play golf with you, or did she just kind of explore the cities wherever y'all were at?
So she actually surprisingly played 0 holes of golf this entire time.
Wow.
So I know most people are like, "How did you talk her into this? Like, what was going on?" But so luckily, she loves to travel and loves being on the road. So I knew, like, I met her in 2020, so I already had this trip in my mind because I was going to originally leave on this trip in 2020, like in April of 2020, of course, COVID, etc.
Yeah. Something had other plans.
Yes, exactly. Not the best time to travel. And so then the next year, just still timing wasn't totally right. And then, so she knew about it. So like, eventually I was like, hey, I got to do the trip. I'm going to lose my mind. And so I was like, are you down to go with the dogs? And she's like, yeah, let's do it. And so luckily she was game. And so she worked remotely for a company in Nashville. So she was able to do that.
Oh, well, that's nice. Yeah.
Full time. And then she's like a competitive runner, does marathons, and sometimes I would complain after walking a lot of holes, and then I remember who I'm talking to. I'm like, oh, never mind. But so she is training we're headed to London in April because she's running the London Marathon, and so
Okay.
she was doing tons of training during that. And then yes, like you said, we would go check out all the cities and do more non-golf stuff than golf stuff, really.
Are you bringing the sticks to London? Find somewhere to tee it up over there.
We're gonna be there for 3 weeks. I think I should.
I mean, you traveled the country with them. You might as well bring them across the pond to London.
I know, exactly. So we're going to London and then Paris and then the stop in Belgium and then Amsterdam. So
I think that's 4 more places to add to the book.
I
50
think they
cities
have
plus 4 countries.
yes.
Traveling when flying, does it make you nervous? Like, I think it makes me nervous, but like when you fly and you have to check your golf clubs, like it makes me nervous. Like, here I have like $3,000 worth of golf clubs, and I'm not sure if they're going to make it here, kind of thing. Does it make you nervous? Traveling with them?
Well, yeah, because I mean, I got so used to it, always having them in the van. Like in the van, I had all my stuff at all times, and so I got so used to that. So like even like when we flew to Alaska and Hawaii, I felt like I had nothing with me. I was like, I just have this
Yeah.
bag, like a regular person traveling. And
Right.
so, but I'll tell you what'll calm your anxiety, and this is a free plug, is just get an Apple AirTag and throw it in your bag, and then
I've heard about that. That way you
yeah,
know when it says your bag's been checked. Well, let me check if it's on the plane. Oh, it's underneath me right
correct.
now. Good to
So
go.
when I landed in both of those places, I was like, "Is my bag here? Great!" And then my clubs actually got lost for like a week during Christmas, but I knew where they were the whole time. They were just sitting in Dallas Fort Worth, the airport for about a week, and I was like, "Well, that's fine. They'll get here eventually." So
Yeah.
anyway,
Listen,
that'll help you out.
flying to Alaska, you're going there to play golf and your clubs don't
Yes,
come. I guess you got to find somewhere to rent some golf clubs because the
yes,
trip can't stop. You got to do what you showed up to go there for. I didn't even
correct.
think
And
about that.
I bought one AirTag and I threw it in my golf bag. I was like, if my clothes get lost, my clothes get lost. I don't care. Like
Yeah,
I got to know where this golf bag is.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. What's we asked about your favorite course. What was like one of the just I'm sure you can't narrow it down to just one, but what was one of the more interesting stories that you had or like people that you met besides Tiger Woods' caddy? Like just someone that really stood out to you along the way.
Yeah. It is a bit like picking your favorite kid, right? I mean, there's
Yeah.
you have 269 people I met, on the road, and they all definitely carry a special place because just had these cool connections with them. And really, so one thing that helps from a story standpoint, um, that I learned on this trip is I would get into these conversations with people, and keep in mind, like I'm talking to these are pure strangers to me, right? Like I
Right.
just meet them oftentimes right by the first tee.
Hmm.
Like, hey, how's it going? Do you guys care if I join you? Or maybe we booked the same tea time and it's already happened or whatever. So I was thinking, as I'm traveling, I'm like, man, there's just so few things now where you're with a stranger for hours on end and you have to talk to them, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm not trying to sound like old man on the rocker or like, oh, technology has ruined, whatever. But genuinely, like, you can have a full day if you want, like a full productive work week and never really talk to a stranger, right? Like you could, if you work
Yeah.
remotely, maybe you then work out after that and you're just doing like Peloton or something else that's virtual, right? And then maybe you order groceries and you can just click to have them left on your front doorstep, right? Or if you
Hmm.
just get takeout, and you can have like this kind of full productive week and then never talk to a stranger. And so had this feeling before I went. I was like, man, I don't think people talk to strangers anymore, or at least it's died down a considerable amount, right? And
Right.
so what I found on this trip as I'm talking to these strangers is there's this comment, like they send you a coded message when you're talking to them. Like they may say it's like what they're saying is different than the words they just told you. Where like they might say, "Oh yeah, well I moved to Vermont after my father died and blah 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 blah." And it's like when they say that little thing, like you just have to kind of be a good listener and hear like, okay, they just mentioned something about their dad passing, and it's like this door opens into a new room.
Hmm.
I just read this analogy in this book, this writing book recently, where it tied into this perfectly. Where this lady talked about how it's like you have it's like when you're talking to someone, it's like you're in a room with 8-foot ceilings that are like those old styrofoam squares that are in every classroom, right? That you can like
Yeah.
poke and move right away. And
Yeah.
it's like when you ask someone
All
a question,
different colors. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like you think this is as big as the room is, right? And then when someone mentions a little comment that offers the opportunity to kind of see that door creak open. It's like you poke the square tile to realize like, oh man, there's a really beautiful vaulted ceiling underneath that, right, or above that. And so, so those moments were like pure magic to me, and that's really why I went on this trip, was to get into those moments. And so, a couple of them, to answer your question, that come to mind is, I mean, and I'll use one in Texas where you are, but
Okay.
in San Antonio, there's a course called Brackenridge, which is an super old historic place. But I met a guy there who was in his 80s, and his name was Frank, and his goal was to shoot his age. And he had stopped playing. So he started playing golf at this course when he was 12. So he'd been playing there for over 70 years at this point. And he had stopped playing golf for about 20 years until recently. And he was like, just woke up one day and was like, I just want to shoot my age, and just got obsessed with that. And so watched every golf YouTube instructor you could imagine, and was out there every day doing that. And he was really funny. He was a lawyer, and he just had all these life philosophies that, like, I think originally he was just going to give me one life philosophy, but then he'd be like, oh, okay, one more life philosophy here. Like, one more turned into like 8 more. And so
you got 4 hours worth of it.
Yes. And then I think about this lady a lot that I played with in New Hampshire, this course called Beaver Meadow. And it was in Concord, New Hampshire, which is like their capital up there. And gorgeous place. Was there in the fall, which is like the Northeast in the fall is just outrageously gorgeous. And so I used to think that Nashville and Tennessee was nice in the fall, and then I went to Vermont. I was like, oh, never mind. This is amazing. And so anyway, I was paired up with her, and she was telling me she was on the city council there, but she told me this story about how she spread her dad's ashes when she went to Pebble Beach. Her dad was a big golfer, and she's a big golfer, and she had this last second opportunity to go to Pebble, and she went to the par 3 7th there, obviously the famous par 3 on the water, and just carried her dad's ashes there in an old, like medicine, like prescription bottle, and went and spread his ashes just behind the green out there. And her caddy, so cool. Yeah, and her caddy had had recently done that with someone that was deceased that he knew, and so he was really supportive of her with that. And she just told me this crazy cool story about it, and how she felt like when she got back on the plane to go home that she lost him all over again, just because she was like, man, I'm leaving him in Monterey and at Pebble Beach. And so those are a couple that come to mind, but man, I could how long do we have? I could go on forever.
as long as we don't want to take too much of your time.
Oh, you're fine.
But I mean, that's why people got to buy the book. All the stories are going to be in the book. Before I got 2 more questions for you before we get in the book.
Yeah.
Was there any hole-in-ones that you had? I mean, you played a lot of golf. There's got to at least be one.
I played a lot of golf. There was not one. So
wow.
I was so close.
It shows how hard a hole-in-one is.
Truly, I don't have one. Truly. Like
Jacob, do you have one?
I don't have one. I've actually
0 for 3 on the show.
I've hit the side of the cup and just put a hole like in the ridge of the cup, and it just never went in. Yeah, so it just sat there. It's just awful. But yeah, that's basically
your buddies are like, that does not count. That does not count. Friends are great like that, right? And so I have one hole-in-one as a little kid. I mean, I was, I don't even know, maybe 11 years old or so, but I've never had one as an adult, and have played, as you guys can probably guess, like a million rounds. And so I came really close a couple times. Not that anyone wants to hear your close hole-in-one story, but I mean, within like an inch or two, maybe 2 or 3 times. And it always happened to be on the days I was playing my worst, and you get up there and hit one really good shot, and but one of them was completely blind, and I was just had a feeling, I was like, I just feel like that's gonna be close. And got up there, and this couple was like looking for their ball, and I was like, is mine in the hole? Is mine in the hole? And then got up there because it was like a little ridge, and then it was literally like 1 inch from the cup. I was like, come on.
I always do that. If I get up to the green, I feel like I hit a good shot, maybe into the sun, you don't see it. I'm like, let me go check the hole real quick, just see if maybe it's in there.
It's like
yet to be in there.
the proper etiquette is like you have to pretend to kind of look around a little bit, like,
Yeah.
and then you're like, well, I'll check the hole, but the whole time that's all you want to do is check the hole.
Right. You just want
when
to
you walk up
sprint
there.
to the tee box.
Yes.
You're so right when you say like when you're having a terrible day, there's always that like one shot that like can keep you coming back all the time. I've had that happen so many times, like just terrible.
Yes.
Like when Chet lived in Houston, like I played a course out in Houston, Wildcat Golf Club out there, and of course you can see kind of the Houston skyline and NRG stadiums there, and
Mm-hmm.
just having a terrible day, you know. And then I get up there and I'm in the middle of the fairway, like 150 yards out, and I'm like, just let me hit it. I just no thought about it at all, and just sinking it in the hole, and you're just like, what just happened? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just weird. You
It's
know, it's
game,
like
man.
golf has that
Yeah.
weird way of always getting you to just come back every time and take your money.
It does for sure. Speaking of Houston, by the way, I played 2 courses there. One, I played Memorial Park, which I would put in
Right.
the same bucket as those bigger ones I mentioned earlier, and then
Yeah. It's got a PGA Tour event there, so
correct, yeah, and like they pumped a ton of money into it, redid it all, etc. And
mm.
then, but one of them, I really love this course there. Did you guys ever play Gus Wortham when you're in Houston?
No.
I've seen it. I'm trying to remember. Is it like on the north side of town?
It
Do you
is.
if you remember?
I want to say it is on the east side of town. It is not in a great area, if that
Oh, I know
makes
what you're
sense.
talking about. Yeah, I know what
Yeah,
you're talking about. I've never played it, but I've seen it pop up on like the Golf Now app. I lived on the northwest side of Houston, so I was like, I'm not driving an hour
that
that
would
way
be
to go
pretty
play.
far.
Yeah.
Yes, it's fantastic. I highly
Okay.
recommend. Really, really fun. I think someone I forget who redid it all at some point, but it's the Houston Golf Association headquarters now.
Mhm.
But um, that place is awesome. Like that was like my favorite course for quite a while as I was traveling.
Awesome. Yeah, Houston's got so many courses, whether they're public, municipal, private. There's always one to choose from there.
Tons, yeah, huge
And
place.
there, it's fun to play golf. Like Jacob mentioned, the Wildcat's a fun course. That was the first course I ever played in Houston, and
Hmm.
you got some of the holes that overlook the skyline, and it's just like cool views. You're playing kind of
I
that
think it's
twilight
3-9.
round.
Is it 3-9 holes out there?
No, Wildcat is 2 separate 18-hole courses.
That's right, 2 separate.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So,
Yeah.
and then they just opened one up actually on the river. They call it East River 9. It's a 9-hole course. It's fully lighted, so you can play it up until they close at like 11 o'clock. But it's got a view of downtown. It's on the East River that runs through Houston, Buffalo Bayou. It's got an awesome view of downtown when you go out there on the driving range and stuff. So, I mean, golf. It's gonna sound cheesy, but it's one of the best things you can do. Really, you meet so many people. Like in your experience, travel the country. Just really, it changes a lot of people's lives, especially if you're a professional. Growing up, wanting to play, you get on the tour, and you get all this fame and money, and it's just a legacy of playing one of the oldest sports in history. So, but
Certainly.
let's get into your book. You said you're still in progress. How's that going? What's it like writing from memory, really?
Yeah, I mean, I took notes as I was traveling, which is definitely helpful. But there's definitely times where I'm like, man, I wish I would have taken more notes, but a lot of it definitely comes back and really helps. And I was able to, use an audio recorder a lot that just was able to capture some of the conversations, which helps, just get back into the sound and hearing someone's voice and being like, that's right,
Right.
that's right, that's what they sounded like. And so, but yeah, it's been going well. I mean, almost hate to jinx it, be like, yeah, it's going great, but it will be hopefully available to pre-order sometime in the near future. And then I'm not sure when it'll be out yet, but it's my first time going through this experience of
Right.
writing a book and getting it published and all that jazz. So I feel like I could write a book about that whole process, of going through. And so
Maybe that'll be the
uh,
next one.
yes, so it'll be a less interesting book, but but anywho, so yeah, so I'm working on that now, and it'll basically, it captures the stories of all these people that I met on this trip, and some kind of more memoirish things, and what it's like to travel America in a van in 2022, and what sleeping in a Walmart parking lot in
Mm.
the middle of nowhere can be like, and what parking in the on a city street in Manhattan, can be like,
Yeah.
and just all the different things. I mean, like, because we went from, I mean, we went, I mean, all this kind of classic Americana stuff we saw, like the Mall of America, I mean, we went to the Minnesota State Fair, which is like, I think second to Texas, right, as far as like the biggest, craziest
Yeah.
state fairs, and went to Fargo, North Dakota. We were in Oklahoma City. Like we went from Oklahoma City up to Fargo, I think within a week, and went to Maine, which was just amazing. Obviously, we talked about Alaska, Hawaii, and so there's plenty to say. I'm sure that my first draft will be much longer than what's eventually put out into the world.
It might be 2 books.
I know, honestly. Trying to keep it from being that essentially,
Right.
but yeah, so it'll be a mix of all that, but I mean, it'll center around the stories of these people, just because they're
Right.
the reason I did this trip, and their stories are fascinating. And keep in mind, these are just regular people, right? Like, you don't have to be famous or have a big following or whatever to
Mhm.
have an amazing story. Which is what I found is the more regular the person, I'll put regular in air quotes, like, the more amazing the story. I mean, it's really cool. And so, and we all had the opportunity to do that, to hear these stories. Just FYI, this was not something that I invented or
Right.
something that only I could do. Like, it's literally, you can go to any public golf course, book a tee time with a stranger, and talk through it with them, right? I mean, just you're gonna get into the normal stuff, right? What do you do? Where are you from? Okay, cool. Oh yeah, blah blah blah. So you can get through that stuff, but man, it's just literally one level down. Like,
Mhm.
one level below that is all the gold, all the good stuff. And so, I think it really, it, everybody wants to be known to a certain capacity, right? I don't mean famous, but they just want to feel known, right? Like,
Right.
that's when you're at your most comfortable. That's when you're your funniest, right? And think about what, like, you guys, you said you're going to a wedding here in New Orleans pretty soon.
Mhm.
Like, you're gonna be around all your buddies, I would assume, and um, I'm sure you'll feel pretty comfortable, pretty funny, more so than you would around a group of strangers, right? And so,
Exactly, yeah.
what I found is a cool way to or I've as I met more people, I think people were just desperate to share their story, because I think sharing your story helps you feel known and safe and cared for, even with a stranger, like
Right.
myself, to them. And so I think people were pretty desperate for that, just because I don't think a lot of people talk to each other anymore, face to face, strangers wise. And so, yeah, so the book will really be centered around that as the North Star, of being
Okay.
like, hey, this thing doesn't happen a lot. Golf happens to be this weird, goofy antidote to this. Like, I don't know what else. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't really know what else gets you with a stranger for this long.
Yeah,
Like,
and you're doing the same thing. You're all trying to accomplish the same goal of getting the
yeah,
ball in the hole at the
yep.
end of the day. So,
And so, yeah, and you kind of have this natural buffer built in. It's not like you're at dinner with a stranger, right? Like, you're
right.
hitting a shot, you're able to, um, walk over to your ball. So it's not like you're in constant contact with them,
Mhm.
but, you have to talk to them. And when you do, I mean, your life will change. Not to sound dramatic, but that'll genuinely happen.
You learn
Yeah.
a lot about a bunch of people. I was gonna ask you about your golf game. Where are you at? You played a lot. Did you see your game get better, or did it stay kind of level because you were more focused on the story aspect of the rounds, or where are you at with your
Yeah.
game?
Well, any golfer would certainly go through, like, when you play a lot of golf. I'm not trying to sound like I'm a martyr here, like, oh, I had to play so much golf, it was terrible, but when you play a lot of golf, like, there's definitely days where, if I was just focused on playing, or like focused on my score, I would have been miserable, just because I would have been like, I just would have gotten burned out. But yeah, like you
Right.
said, I was really focused on, like, getting these pairings, getting with the people. I'm taking photos a lot as we're playing, talking to them. So my game was totally secondary to me the whole time. But of course, like any
Definitely.
golfer, like, my game was just,
Yeah.
somewhat up and down. But I would say, I mean, it stayed pretty consistent. I mean, I worked in golf as an assistant pro at a club in Chicago for a couple of years, and so I was able to learn a bunch and practice a bunch then. And I've always kind of been basically around a one handicap,
Okay.
for quite, I don't know, years and years and years. And so, um, but I mean, yeah, so there's certain times on the trip where I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot how to play golf. Like,
Yeah.
I've got to take a few days off, because I can, like, barely make contact. And then, take a couple
But your
days off.
body
And
takes
then,
a toll too, playing
yeah, I
almost
mean,
every day, and then
sometimes
driving the van too. I mean,
yes,
it's not a
yeah.
easy life.
So I'm glad you said that because sometimes I would, it's an early morning round and I'm trying to hit like a long iron on like the second hole and I'm like, yeah, I don't think sleeping in the Walmart parking lot and then coming out here and playing is like the best recipe for this. It's like that's
Yeah.
not your sharpest per se, but anywho, I survived. And uh, it's the weather's starting to turn here, which is nice. So I'm getting out there more now and um, remembering that all golf was not just on the trip last year, but still enjoy doing it, which is good.
Right. Well, that's yeah. You didn't get burnt out. Where's your home course in Nashville? Where you typically play at?
Yeah, so Nashville actually has a bunch of municipals for a city this size. There's 5 or 6, I think.
Okay.
So I bounce around within those. McCabe, this one called McCabe Golf Course is kind of a home one here. I belong to I joined Sweden's Cove, which is down near Chattanooga. It's a I don't know if you guys know of it, but it's a 9-hole golf course down there. So that's kind of a home track. I mean, I go down there a decent amount. Typically, I've really only been like once in the past year because I was gone. But
You're right.
anyway, so yeah, I've been just back at the munis around here and waiting for the grass to be green and it not to
Get out
be
there.
wet and cold
Yeah.
every day pretty much.
With you on that one. Well, Jeremy, we appreciate you coming on and telling your story. And we're definitely looking forward whenever the book comes out, getting our hands on a copy of that and reading it. Of course, we'll do our part as much as we can, promote it and try to get it out there because just this hour conversation has really opened my eyes up onto, like I mentioned before the show started, I'm out here, just moved to this part of Central Texas. Don't really know anybody to play golf with. And I previously was like, oh, I just want to play with myself, work on my game, just kind of get through the round. But
Hmm.
now I want to get out there and talk to these people and meet, figure out, like you said, peel back that onion and that one little thing that opens the door. And then you really have an honest and meaningful conversation with a total stranger. So,
Completely, yeah. I was gonna before we wrapped, I was gonna say, hey, your goal this week is
yeah,
to go play with a stranger out there.
I might
Like
go play Friday. I might be like, hey, am I playing by myself? Yeah,
yes.
no, pair me with somebody. Put somebody on the tee sheet. Let me
If Tex
let me play
if,
with somebody.
absolutely. If Texas is
Yeah.
as hot as I remember it, the weather should be fine. You should be good
It's
to
so yesterday it was 50 degrees. Today was 85.
that's perfect.
We'll see what it is on Friday. It fluctuates. You never know. But
Yes.
where can people find you? What are your socials? They can check it out and stay tuned for the book.
Yeah, so everything is just at Paired Up Golf, PAIRED up golf, pairedupgolf.com, which I'm redoing right now. The website's a bit of a wreck, but yeah, just on socials there, I'll keep people posted with when the book's ready for pre-order and when it's if I get published and all that stuff, I'll definitely post on Twitter and Instagram, and then I guess TikTok, which I'll use some now,
Yeah.
and then, but I really, I mean, of course, it's helpful to have people follow you on there just for publishing's sake and that kind of thing. But as I'm writing this book, I'm really not posting a ton, so you definitely feel free to hop on there and dig through kind of older stuff I posted from the trip.
Mhm.
But I didn't really post a ton as I was going, just because I was eventually I just got so locked into the people and their stories and was like, all right, I'm saving this for the book. It's just my energy is best spent staying
Right.
present with these people than it is
Right. Yeah.
worrying about oh gosh, well, Instagram only lets me have this reel be 90 seconds, can I carve off whatever. And so
Yeah.
which definitely went through times of that on the road where I was like so frustrated and I was like, all right, screw it, I'll do it later. And so
Mhm.
anyway, that's a long way of saying they can find me there. Would
Yeah.
love to have them. And as soon as I'm just trying to be on a little bit of a media diet here as I write this book, because hard to keep the antenna clear when you're scrolling basically,
Exactly.
right? So
Yeah. Get the book done and then just start posting little teaser clips like you have on TikTok and some will start taking off and people it'll build anticipation for the book. It's just like releasing a movie trailer. Like you released the trailer that caught my eye and here we are talking for a little over an hour and just hear more about it.
perfect.
So yeah. But yeah, we
This trailer will be the cocaine bear of golf books. That'll be the
there you
goal.
go. Nice. Nice. So
I think
well
that's maybe like the most viral trailer of all time.
yeah.
Essentially. So
Yep.
Oh
Well,
man, but yeah,
Jeremy,
thanks for having me though. I appreciate this.
yeah, we really appreciate you coming on. And of course, we'll stay in touch and look forward to reading the book once it comes out.
All right, thanks, fellas.
Yep. Yeah, have a good one, man.